everybody. Welcome to the T3 Fit Scoliosis podcast. We have been kind of incognito for a while, but we are back and we are back with a guest. Her name is Kerry Green. She teaches women in particular, she teaches to master their anxiety and how to heal their nervous system. Kerry also has scoliosis and a spinal fusion, and she is here to tell us her story of all of it, of dealing with anxiety and mastering it for women and her journey with scoliosis. So, Kerry, I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this and be here, share my
You,
story.
you are welcome. Would you mind starting with your story of scoliosis?
Yes. So going back to middle school is when I started noticing that I was having pain in my back. And I had already had a couple of those, gym checks.
Touch your
uh,
toes.
Yeah, they didn't find anything, which was, bizarre because I already had a pretty significant scoliosis. Went to the doctor, got diagnosed, and was told the same story as most people. You have to wear a brace, and we'll wait and see what happens. So I think around this time, I was probably in high school, and I was wearing this brace that I was told, you should wear it 24/7. But of course, me being like, I'm not doing that kind of thing, I would wear it at night. And I remember having so much pain back then, and that was really tough on me. And
How old were you when this started, when your journey with this started?
yes, the journey started in middle school. So that was probably
Okay.
around 13 or 14. I think when
Okay.
I started wearing the brace was probably like freshman year of high school, maybe
Okay.
around 15. And I remember not really understanding it at the time, kind of like making a joke out of it. My friends would come over for a sleepover and they'd be like strapping me in my brace, like, haha. And,
Yeah.
looking back, oh, that was pretty traumatic, not really
Yeah.
funny. I honestly don't remember what happened to this brace.
Okay.
I I have no clue. I have no memories of that. Um, but I do remember all of the doctor's appointments, the wait and see, basically being told eventually you're going to have this surgery.
Okay.
And they would kind of scare me and say, if the longer you wait, the worse it will be. So, we really encourage you to do it now. But I was playing so many sports and living my
Hmm.
life. I was like
Hmm.
horseback riding, playing softball, soccer, cheerleading, all that. So I just put it
Do you
off.
Do you remember what type of brace it was? I mean, like, what year was this? Was it a plastic brace or
This would have been about 2002,
okay, okay.
3. It was, I don't know the names of them. I know it was like really hard
There's
and all one piece and it's velcroed in the back.
okay, but it was did they do a 3D scan? Do you remember of your body? And
I think
then they okay.
so.
And
I
then it's
remember,
plastic and it's Velcro.
yeah, yeah, and I
Okay.
remember, strangely, the day that they were, like, wrapping me in the paper mache.
Okay. Wow, they did that then?
Yeah,
Wow, okay.
yes. It
That's
was
because
so
that's what I had in the
really?
'80s. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I didn't
bizarre.
know that yeah, it's a very weird feeling.
Yes,
So,
very.
okay, sorry, didn't keep
Yeah. So at the time, during this experience of wearing the brace and being in high school, I was in significant pain. That stands out to me so much.
mhm,
Um, but I kept putting off this surgery because, of course, I didn't want to do that. I was hoping, that would never happen. But then, fast forward to college, I was in so much pain. I don't even think I could take it anymore.
okay,
Um, and I was like, all right, well, you know what? I'll do it on Christmas break because I thought, okay, it's going to be no big deal
right.
because that's what they say, it's going to be no big deal. So I go home for Christmas break, get the surgery. It is a big deal, of course. It's like a
Mhm,
year-long recovery, but it was wild because I got it done, did my 30 days Christmas break, or not even 30 days, a couple weeks
mhm,
here home,
mhm, mhm.
flew back to North Carolina, I'm carrying my books to class, going about my life, just totally
Really?
normal.
And
Yes.
you were cleared by the doctors to do all
My memories are
that? Okay.
so, uh I think I was. I think I
Okay.
was. They did not tell me to do any, like, physical therapy or anything
Okay.
after. It was kinda like, you'll do your checkup next time you're home. We check so I remember doing that. "Okay, you're good to
Mhm.
go. You look great.
Mhm.
You look great." So, here's where I knew and kinda gets into the anxiety stuff and the
Mhm.
nervous system stuff.
Mhm.
So, after the surgery, now my back is fused, can't remember, it's like T1 to
T1.
T11.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the strange thing is my pain patterns were exactly the same after. And and I remember thinking, like, why is my pain pattern the exact same if it, at least on the top, if that part is straight now?
Right.
And so there's some other things going on in my life, and I'm figuring out what I want to do with my life. And I got into like social work and therapy and
Mhm.
started learning about, trauma and anxiety and all
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And I started to think, "Oh, maybe there's something more to this pain." Like, maybe it's not totally about the scoliosis, maybe it's
Right.
emotional.
Yeah.
So that now we're fast forwarding even more to,
Mhm.
after grad school, and yeah, actually I was living in Florida and I still had this pain.
Okay.
And whenever it would happen, I would go into this total shutdown, just being like frozen, just
Okay.
totally frozen and hopeless and, like, being mad at the world and mad at
Mhm.
my body. But then, I started learning about the nervous system and
Mhm.
thinking, there must be something more, and I learned that the nervous system can store basically, like, memories and pain patterns and emotions.
Mhm.
And I sort of started talking to someone. I started learning that there was other things you can do for your scoliosis, which we were never told about. Back then, I never knew about Scully Pilates and
Yeah.
Schroth. And, I was like, you know what? Let me try some things and just see what happens, see how I feel. And I
Mhm.
started a journey of like working on that, and it
Mhm.
kind of melted away, which was wild. As soon as I started doing things for my scoliosis that made me feel like more in control again,
Mhm.
my pain melted away, and now I barely have any.
So do you think that if you hadn't had the surgery and you had learned about that even without having the surgery, that the pain would have subsided?
I mean, I would say probably, I can't say for
Okay.
sure,
Of
um,
course.
but when I read about other people's experiences, and
Mhm.
I had a couple meetings with, Erin Myers from Spiral Spine and read her
Mhm.
book, and, she talks a lot about a lot of people who don't get the surgery and they come into the studio, and a lot of this is so much we're holding so much trauma from all
Yeah.
of these doctor's appointments and being told, "Oh, wait and see, and there's nothing you can do." And if you think about that on a biological level and how scary that would be for your
Mhm.
nervous system to be told, you have this condition, there's nothing you
Yeah.
can do, that's gonna make us feel totally out of control. So I think there's something to, like, doing things to make you feel in control and knowing that you can help your body and you can
Mhm.
heal your body in many ways, even though you have this scoliosis.
Yeah.
I do think that you could reduce your pain drastically because the trauma of it would melt away a little bit.
It's so interesting. I just want a quick question. Do you know what your curves were?
Ah, I believe the one of them was probably 60. I think the top one was maybe 55, if I can
Okay.
remember. I tried to
Okay.
find those X-rays, but they're long gone.
It's so interesting because it's so interesting because there is with so many people I talk to who have scoliosis and they have pain, and sometimes when surgery is necessary, there's a certain dark space of this whole journey, right? And there's nothing that we can do to get past it. I
Mhm.
know with my experience, it was a very dark time and there were no answers. It was wait and see and get a cast, get a brace, get a second brace, do your exercises, didn't work, surgery, and then that was it. And there wasn't the support. And even though Schroth existed, it wasn't recognized in this country at
Right.
the time. So it's like you carry this darkness and the orthopedics with the wait and see, it's hard to take that on, right? Not just you as an individual, but your parents as well. And to
Yeah.
create some type of support system with that. And yeah, I hear it over and over and over again. But thankfully, there's the knowledge out there now with Schroth, with Scully Pilates, with Aaron Meyer. There's tons of people out there who have spinal fusions, who teach Pilates, who do all different types of modalities and training, strength training, to give the support and not have it be as dark a time as it was. Um, and part of what you teach is that component as well, right? Teaching women to master their anxiety and to heal the nervous system is something that is almost more more deeper than the surgery
Yeah.
because it gives us acceptance, it gives us encouragement, it gives us nurturing.
Right.
So would you okay, I'm gonna stop talking. You share with about it with us.
Yes. Well, one thing that I think is super important and that I teach and I resonate the most with my own experience is because you're talking about the darkness, the dark time.
Mm. Mhm.
I was in the darkness for, I don't know, 15 years,
Okay.
and it
That's a
was so
long time.
dark. I mean, so it can, and that's why this is so, I feel so passionate about this, because the thing about the nervous system is when you're in survival mode, especially the frozen part, the
Mhm.
dark, which we call dorsal vagal, fight or freeze,
Mhm.
um, you can stay there for weeks, months, or years. You could stay there for
Wow.
years because your body, your nervous system is going into this protective mode when you're
Mhm.
going through any kind of distressing experiences, and let's say those distressing experiences are, they keep going and going.
Mhm.
Your nervous system is so smart, it's going to be like, you know what we're going to do, we're not going to be here for this, we are going to shut down, you don't have to be fully present if you're going to
Right.
go through this. So when I was in the dark time, I really thought that I was depressed just from what I knew about depression, which was
Okay.
hardly anything. I just knew that it was okay that people feel down. Um, but there was another thing that I experienced, which I never understood what it was. I thought it was something wrong with me. When
Mhm.
something would like trigger me, I would become frozen. I mean, physically frozen, and let's say like go
Okay.
in my room and not be able to come out, even though I would maybe want to, or I would want to like say something and talk to people. And it's like a physical hijacking.
Mhm. That's a perfect description of it.
Yeah.
And and you were in that space, I'm gonna call it, for 15 years?
Yeah. I mean, you come out some days, of course. I
Right.
had,
Right.
I was functioning and I had friends and I had fun and I went to college and I was performing, getting good grades. When, but then when I would be triggered or stressed, then I would go into this dorsal vagal and then I would be hijacked again and I would just sit in my room and I wouldn't come out and I would think, oh my gosh, I'm so depressed. What's wrong with me? Now, what I know is like, oh, you weren't depressed. You were in survival mode.
Mhm. So
And
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to say that's something that I really want everyone with scoliosis to know about, because
Mhm.
if you think about being told you have this thing in your body and there's nothing you can do. I mean, what this
Yep.
dorsal vagal frozen piece is, if on a primal level, is you have the fight or flight, which is okay, you're running from a predator or you're going to fight it. And then you have the frozen state, which is now the predator has you and you're trapped.
Mhm.
So if you think about a doctor telling you you have a condition and there's nothing you can do about it, your nervous system is going to say, hey, we're trapped.
Yeah. So how did you learn to get out of that?
Yeah, great question. Part of it was noticing that I had this belief stuck with me that kept
Okay.
repeating over and over and over. And what it sounded like was, there's nothing I can do about this.
Okay.
And then I was like, you know what? So I was doing therapy and teaching people how to like change their negative beliefs and thoughts. And
Mhm.
I'm like, you know what? Wait, I have some. There is a cassette in my brain playing over and over saying there's nothing I can do. And when I would have pain or be triggered, that's what it sounded
Mhm.
like.
Mhm.
So I said, I don't, where does that come from? Is that really true? How do I know that for sure? Like, are there things I can do? And I actually started seeing online, like, thanks to Instagram, all these accounts.
Yeah.
And I started seeing all these amazing things that people were doing and, actually getting like suggested people's accounts that have
Mhm.
scoliosis because,
Mhm.
and I was like, you know what? There's all these programs. Like, so the belief started to shift. And then I realized that belief is not mine, actually, where that came from the voices of others, those
Mhm.
appointments, the doctors.
Okay.
Not that they wanted to traumatize me, but that's
Yeah.
just what happens.
Yeah.
Um, so
It's
I
their
took
language.
their language. They
Yeah.
don't realize they're traumatizing us, but that's a
Yeah.
whole nother
It's a whole nother episode.
it's a whole nother thing. Yeah. Uh,
Oh, yeah,
so
I think everybody could jump on that and be like, "Stop."
exactly. Yeah, stop. Don't say that. Yeah. Um, I have a funny story about that actually after. But, so I started to shake up this belief and realize it wasn't mine. And I was really
Mhm.
curious about it. And then I found actually the Vivian Doreen, her Scolio Fitness. And
Mhm.
well, I don't, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Let me try it.
Yeah.
I tried it. My whole belief shifted because I felt so in control of my body now. I was like, that's wrong. There's so much I can do.
Yeah.
And that's when
So
everything changed.
so you were already practicing the anxiety space for women
Yeah.
that you specialize in, and I say this not to sound like mean or arrogant or anything, but it was like you were practicing what you were preaching,
Yes. So the
and
way,
then it clicked.
yeah. Yeah. So when I started, before I specialized in women with anxiety and trauma, I was doing other things. I was working with like foster kids
Okay.
and so I wasn't quite focusing on that yet, but I was in
Okay.
the process of learning about trauma. And it was kind of aligned with my own journey and my work is like the more I worked with trauma and the more I learned about it, the more awareness I also had of myself. And I'm like actually grateful that it happened that way because I don't know if I would have found out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the journeys are really aligned. But the thing that helped me the most was the challenging negative thoughts, helping others do
Mhm.
that, and then
Mhm.
realizing like how many because I was doing it in other areas, but not with the
Okay.
scoliosis,
Okay.
not realizing like the beliefs that I held that weren't maybe correct.
It's it's um it's so interesting because I mean, like I said, my own story with it was very dark, and when you flip it on yourself and you're like, wait a minute, and you have, as you said, you have that tape player that's repeating, right? And it's just like coming back at you and coming back at you and coming back at you. And then you stop the tape and you're like, I need to change this recording. I need to flip. For anybody who knows what a cassette player is and how they work, you would flip it and hit record on the other side.
Good point.
And then, it's like now it's all digital, but that's what we would do. And then you just change the conversation
Yeah.
so that your repetition of a recording is something totally different. And when that starts to happen, like we just our doors open up to what is actually possible. and 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 you get to give the gift of that to not just yourself,
Right.
right, but people on Instagram. As you
Mhm.
said, there's a world of us out there with scoliosis and spinal fusions, and it becomes, I can't even say it becomes a gift because it's so much bigger than that for us. Um, when did you when you discovered this for yourself, how long ago was that?
It was 6 years ago,
Okay,
maybe. Yeah.
okay. And you've just like, and what else has it given you, and how have you translated that into people in our community and helping them?
Yeah. So at first it was I was very focused on the beliefs of it all, like
Okay.
changing these, noticing that we hold these negative core beliefs
Mhm.
that are kind of, affecting us emotionally and even in our behaviors. Like if I have a belief that there's nothing I can do, then everything that I do is going to be aligned with that, right? So at first it
Mhm.
was very focused on that. But here's what happened and how I got into like the nervous system aspect of it all. So I had my private practice and I'm working with women to like, challenge their anxiety with talking.
Mhm.
Um, kind of battling their, let's say, fears, irrational thoughts, negative
Okay.
beliefs about themselves. And so I would have the most committed ladies in the world just wanting so badly to change their anxiety or their, negative beliefs about themselves.
Mhm.
And they would come to the session over and over and over. And it would work, during the session. But here's what happens when you're in survival mode. For some reason, let's say you have trauma or you've just been through so much chronic stress,
Mhm.
it's really hard to change your negative beliefs about anything if you're in survival mode because it's almost like a different, not almost, it's like a different part of the brain is online. Like
Okay.
survival brain is different from logical brain.
Mhm.
So if they leave the session and then they're still in survival mode, everything's still going to sound really negative.
Okay.
And what we're taught in school as therapists is very basic, like grounding techniques, like, you can breathe and you can, do XYZ, go for a walk and all of that, which is great. But I realized it just wasn't enough.
Mhm.
Like there has to be something more that can get someone out of survival mode so that
Mhm.
the work that they're doing in the therapy sessions or the coaching sessions is going to stick.
Mhm.
And so that's how got into nervous system regulation and got certified in neurological fitness.
Okay.
And for those listening, they can't see me, but there's so basically these really short somatic exercises that you can do that make your nervous system feel safe. It's all physical, nothing to do with
Okay.
thinking. Like people do like body tapping and the
Okay.
videos I make with like the shaking and
Okay.
the bouncing
Okay.
around. Um,
Okay.
s- so that makes us feel the nervous system feel safe.
Mhm.
Rational brain comes back online, and then we can kind of work on our thoughts after.
So
That
do
makes
you so do you do the nervous system, I'll call them taps, and
yes,
then do you kind of follow through with, like, affirmations so that it's a building block of blanketing out the negative thoughts?
Mhm. Great
Okay.
question. Great question. It's just like what I in the program I created, the process is like step 1, we regulate, just regulate, feel safe again. Step
Okay.
2 is exactly what you said, like let's find some of the negative beliefs and then we can actually rewire them through like let's say tapping while you're saying it.
Okay.
So like, my old belief is there's nothing I can do about my body, about my life, and you're like tapping as you're saying it, then you
Mhm.
can have a new belief emerge that's like, there's always something I can do and I'm healing all the time. And
Okay.
it really sets it into the nervous system.
Okay. It's interesting because I spoke with somebody a while ago, and it was the nervous system, and she was talking about tapping, just tapping on your temples, tapping
Yeah.
on your forehead, and she has scoliosis, and she didn't know her curves, but she did this nervous system tapping, and her curves decreased and she grew.
Oh, wow. That's crazy
And
that you
I
said
was,
that because that happened to me.
really?
Yes.
Tell us more.
Okay. So after my surgery, well, here's another thing they don't tell you, that the
There's a
parts that
lot.
aren't fused the
Okay.
parts that aren't fused can get worse. Okay, they probably should have mentioned that so that I could have been a little more careful, but neither here nor there. So I, moved to Florida and I was like, you know
Mhm.
what? I'm really curious. I just want to get an x-ray because I want to know. I haven't gotten one in so long.
Right.
I had my x-ray from right after the surgery. So my lumbar was still at exactly 20.
Okay.
And then, so that was 2007. So I probably got an x-ray done in 2020
Okay.
and saw that the lumbar was 25.
Okay.
And I got freaked out. I was like so freaked out, like, whoa, now this is not good. I
Yeah.
need
Your
to
nervous system is like,
It was really activated.
yeah.
It was
Yeah.
really activated. So around this time is when I was doing Vivian's program and I was learning about the nervous system and kind of just like really regulating myself. I was doing all the things, so many things.
Mhm.
Fast forward 1 year, and I was like, let me see, because I was like kind of growing crazy about it. Let me see if we're the same, better, or worse.
Right.
It went back to 20 in 1 year, back to 20.
Really
Yes. And the
interesting.
the doctor he was so sweet, but he didn't know. He was like, what have you been doing? I'm like trying to tell him, like,
Uh-huh.
I'm regulating my nervous system. I'm doing Scolio Pilates. And he's like writing it down. He's like, okay, well, keep doing that.
And this the orthopedic you had seen before in the
Uh,
beginning?
someone different because that guy was at NYU.
Okay.
Yeah. And this
Okay.
was just somebody that I found in Florida.
Okay.
Hmm.
Interesting. It's what you know what I say if it works and it keeps us living in a healthy space and being pain free and it's empowerment and from there you can go, get stronger with either working with Viv because it's Day with Viv, right? On
Yeah.
Instagram. Yeah.
Hmm.
I saw her just 3 weeks ago. So, but if it's her or, anything with Schroth, just to have those, once again, those building blocks to increase our strength, not just physically, but mentally as well. And keep out the negative blocks, the darkness of it. It's good. And it's great also because you gave the orthopedic information and
Hmm.
hopefully instead of having like the wait and see policy, it's like, well, look into
Exactly.
this and not, it's so often the case where if you go to see a doctor, it in some ways it becomes less about us, you
Mhm.
know, and that's a whole other conversation. But you are based in Florida and you are from New Jersey, from up north. We were
Yes.
neighbors. Then you were in New York.
Right.
And how long have you been practicing all of this combined now together?
All of the program that I just created, which I call Nerve to Soar, and it's an 8 week
Okay.
program, which is the Mastering Anxiety and Heal Your Nervous System for women. I just started that actually 2 months ago. So I have
Okay.
two founding members,
Nice.
brand new. I spent a long time creating it and figuring out like the perfect way to incorporate everything, like the best things that I use for trauma and anxiety and therapy,
Hmm.
adding the physical parts as well, and then,
Okay.
going through step by step how we
Okay.
can really like, speed up this healing
Yeah.
process.
And
Hmm.
this is an 8-week course, you said.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I have a question for you. If, I always like to ask this question towards the end. If you met the young Kerry when she was in pain and not diagnosed, two questions. What would you say to her? And if you met the young Kerry who was in pain and diagnosed, what would you say to her?
Hmm. I would met the young Kerry that was in pain and not diagnosed.
Mhm.
I would say there's look for something, find out there is a reason for this. Because back then, everything was so confusing
Yeah.
and it seemed more like the universe is like out to get me kind of
Mhm.
thing. Like
Yeah.
life is unfair. Um, Something's wrong with you. I would reassure her that there's a reason for your pain. This is very valid. And also, there's other things going on in your life too, right? It's not just scoliosis.
Yeah.
I'd say it's okay. You can find out what's going on and take care of yourself. Like you can get help, you know. So I would maybe feel less confused and hopeless at the time.
Mhm.
If I was diagnosed, what would I say that was? I think I would say the same thing
Okay.
because it was still very hopeless and very feeling like
Mhm.
unjust, like everything
Mhm.
felt unjust, that I had this
Mhm.
thing happening in my body. It's not fair, other people are normal. I was very angry. So I think I would go back and say it's okay to be angry.
Yeah.
It's okay to be angry, but you can heal from this. There are things you can do. There are things you can do. Don't listen to them.
So and I hear you and I hear me, but I hear the same, like, same person. Just I didn't have anybody saying that
Yeah.
to my young self. But is there yeah. Is there anything else you would like to share that we haven't covered, that you would like to tell the audience today?
I loved your last question. So I think that for anyone listening, that is the message, if anything, I would want to give. If you're feeling in pain or you're feeling hopeless or you're feeling angry and like life is not fair because of this,
Mhm.
take what we're talking about today and all of your other episodes and use that as like data, real data, that you have a world, a whole universe of things that you can do to heal. There's always something you can do to heal, always. Doesn't mean you're going to take scoliosis out of the body, but we're healing all the time.
Yeah. And I just wanna ask this one question. Have you ever come across or were you ever at a point where you weren't open to receiving? Or have you had clients who weren't open to receiving and taking this in? Because it can be a little bit of an adjustment for people to be like, if I do this, this will go away. And
Mhm.
with our bodies and with the curves, it and in this country, we're a country that wants immediate satisfaction, and
Right.
sometimes that doesn't always happen. So, what would be something like if I tried it and said, "This isn't working," and I felt very frustrated. What 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 else can be done to support that person to help them through the journey?
I love this question because when we're in survival mode, we're not going to believe it. So
Yeah.
I would actually,
Very.
I would normalize that. I wouldn't try to convince anyone to believe that
Mhm.
because you're not going to believe it until you see it. So I would really validate that and say, and I would just explain, you're in survival mode. That makes sense. It makes sense that you are, and it makes sense that you don't believe that yet. Let's take one more step. Let's just try one more step, and that's it. Because I'm not going to try to convince anyone of something they're not going to believe yet.
Yeah. So it's about people. It's about validating them being heard.
Yes, and explaining what survival mode is. Like, if you're in survival mode, you're not going to
Yeah.
believe things are going to get
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're just like you're in that moment.
you're just in it.
Yeah. But that's in our world and in every world, we just we often need to be heard. And when we are heard, then we can slow down.
Yeah.
And that's huge. That's huge in what you're saying and what you're offering and what you're giving. And in this community, I mean, I can only talk about this community because I've lived with this most of my life and I have different segments of it. Um, but if I had had that when I was younger, it would have been so different.
So different.
It would have been so different. My daughter was diagnosed, and so I changed the conversation. Um, but the fear was there, and then we just slowed down.
Right.
So, but thank you. Is there anything else you would like to say to the people listening to this podcast episode?
I would just like to say you are healing all the time. Just keep repeating that to yourself. You are healing all the time. We're changing beliefs as people are listening to this.
So everyone take that into account. You are healing all the time, and just repeat it as often as you need to. Walk down the street, say it in your car, sing it to yourself. However it gets you through it. We are healing all the time. Kerry, I would like to thank you very much for being a guest on the show. If anybody would like to reach out to Kerry, you can find her on Instagram, Kerry Green Official. She is listed there. I will post this in the show notes. But Kerry, I would like to thank you so much for being a guest on the T3 Fit Scoliosis podcast. It has been enlightening. It has been empowering. It has been kind, and it has been validating. And I wish I had known you when I was younger in the beginning of my journey. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.